What is generics? It is a feature that allows you to create a class or method that allows for any type of object to be passed in as a parameter. Alright, you might be a little confused, but hang in with me. Say you wanted a class dedicated to storing some data. Say we wanted to make the class to be able to store a dog object. Well, if we wanted to do that, we would need to create a dog data class specifically for storing dog data. We would have a global variable of type dog called data and some methods like getData, setData, which takes in a parameter of type dog, and printData. Now let's do the same thing if we wanted to make a class to store car objects. We would need to make a car data class with a global variable called data of type car with the methods getData, setData, which takes in a parameter of type car, and printData. I'm sure you picked up on the fact that these classes are extremely redundant. Most of the code is the same apart from the fact that one deals with dogs and one deals with cars. This is where generics can shine. We can create a generic class which would be able to adapt based on the type of data we want to store in it. This will prevent unnecessary, redundant, and repetitive code like we have here. We have our public class called data, and now we add a set of angled brackets. This signifies that the class is meant to take in type T. You can actually name this whatever you'd like, but T is the convention. So this T is almost like a placeholder. It essentially signifies any data type that could be passed into this class as a parameter. Secondly, in the case where you'd want multiple types to be passed in, that is also possible. You would just need to separate them using commas. Let's continue writing the code. This time we can make a global variable of type T called data. This is essentially the generic equivalent of the dog and car type variables that we used in the last example. This T will automatically update to whatever data type is passed into the class. Now let's write a public method called getData, and let's just have it return our global variable named data. And a method called setData, which takes a parameter of type T and sets our global variable to the input. And finally, a print method which prints our data. That being said, if this code were proper, we would want to ensure that this type T was even printable to begin with, but for the sake of understanding the basics, this is fine. And now we essentially converted our classes from earlier to a generic class type, which allows for any type of object to be used. And say for example we wanted to create a dog data object using this new generic method. Here's what it would look like. Here's the generic class name. Then we would have a set of angled brackets, and inside there is the class or data type that is being passed into our generic class. Then there is the variable name, and then finally the generic class constructor. And really quickly I want to touch upon wrapper classes. I will not go into too much depth about them, and will probably make a separate video about it in the future, but all you need to know is that wrapper classes are the class equivalents of the primitive data types. Integer corresponds to int, character corresponds to char, and double with a capital D corresponds to double. The reason why I bring this up with generics is because generics only lets you pass in objects into the angled brackets. Therefore, if you ever wanted to use a primitive data type, you would have to make use of their wrapper classes because primitive variables are not objects. And that's all you need to know to understand the basics of generics. If you enjoyed it, feel free to like and subscribe. Thank you for watching.